Good afternoon. So quickly, we will go through our last and final program, esports. Esports is pretty close to near and dear to me due to the fact that, number one, in 2013, I worked for Microsoft. And at that time, we launched the Xbox One console, which we partnered with a very unique and up and coming platform called Twitch at the time, which you'll hear a lot more about going forward in this presentation. And the second part is I was an early investor in a Overwatch league here in Boston called the Uprising. So I actually have a financial stake in this too. When talking about esports, really what we got to start with though is the video game industry. In terms of the way the entertainment world works right now, the video game industry is absolutely crushing the field. We hear all the time about Avengers Endgame making $1 billion. In truth, the video game industry is larger than movies, music, and all the sports leagues combined. It is absolutely destroying it on a major level. Why is this happening? A big part about it is esports. What is esports? Well, let me start with talking about it. 20 years ago, you told me that people were going to watch other people play video games. I would have told you you're absolutely crazy due to the fact that all I did as a kid was sit around and wait for the other person that was playing the video game to get out of the way and let it be my turn. But that has completely changed in this day and age. Overall, we have your typical video game esport league. It is set up the same way as you watch the NHL, the NFL, the Premier League soccer, and it's also attracting people from all over the world to this platform. Gamers compete online. Gamers compete at their local GameStop. They compete at Best Buys, and they compete at live tournaments. Madison Square Garden last month, in November, hosted the Fortnite finals, where you had 8 kids playing against 85 other kids across the entire globe. 42,000 people showed up to this, paid an entry fee to watch this happen. It's also watched by millions of people online through the streaming service that I talked about earlier called Twitch. There are also other streaming services launching all the time right now to try to compete with one another, sort of like ABC and NBC do on the television network. But Twitch was kind of the first people to really establish themselves in the streaming world, and they've become a huge player in this world. They were founded right around, I would say, 2010, and they were recently bought by Amazon. Who isn't bought by Amazon these days? These gamers, though, also can make millions of dollars, and they have millions of followers online. There's a young man named Ninja. His real name is Sean Maccabee, and he absolutely is right now crushing it. He's making almost $3 million in sponsorships. We're talking about NBA and NFL level salaries in terms of what you're getting from outside consumer groups that basically sponsor and wear their products. Activision, all these major players play huge roles in esports, and they're hiring people at enormous rates, and are also competing with one another to get people to play certain games on their platform all the time. So not only do these players make sponsorship dollars, they're getting courted by Twitch, by Twitch's competitors, to basically be exclusive rights to these people's streaming platform to basically generate more revenue for them. And finally, when it comes to esports, probably in the next, I would say 10 to 12 years, it will become an Olympic sport. With ballroom dancing already being an Olympic sport, I cannot see why this would not also join that ranks. Like I said earlier, worldwide audience, this growth is exploding. 454 million people worldwide. And we're not talking about only recordings. Very few of esports tournaments are actually not watched live, which is a huge draw in this day and age due to the fact that advertisers are looking for what people are actually coming to in real time. They don't want to see people be able to fast forward through their commercials. They want to really be able to hit it hard right in the moment. Just to give you kind of a perspective, once again, we hear about the Super Bowl every year. The Super Bowl was watched less than the League of Legends World Championship Finals this year by about 2 million people, and that is going to keep growing. Esports viewership is rising year over year, and it's going to be bigger than all the sports leagues very quickly. For a while, they thought the NFL would stay ahead of it. The NFL just had one of its worst years ever, with viewership being down almost 15%. So it is totally possible that esports could surpass every single sports franchise in the coming years. But not to be outdone, all these franchises are getting into the game. We are talking about huge backers. Jerry Jones from the Dallas Cowboys, Robert Kraft from the New England Patriots, the Madison Square Garden Group. They're all investors in franchises, and they've all invested in these leagues. Shaquille O'Neal is one of the largest investors in the Overwatch League. So When we talk about esports, we're not talking about a small startup company that doesn't have a lot of financial backing means going out and looking for investors. We're talking about an industry that is backed by financial and tech giants in their industry. So they have amount of money to grow at huge rates, and they also have huge platforms and people that will speak all the time and be in front of the public to kind of get the word out about esports. The global market, the global esports market is expected to reach 1.1 billion in 2019 and keep growing all the way through 2022 at exponential rates. So the way the revenue for esports right now is generated is really through sponsorships, where you get Mountain Dew, you get all these consumer product goods that are sponsoring tournaments, they're sponsoring athletes, they are sponsoring basically small portions of the controllers, or they're putting ads on consoles all across the world to try and attract this huge audience. When we talk about marketing in my world, one of the audiences we are always looking for are people ages 21 to 35, and this is the hotspot for that. These are where these people are consuming large live events. Media rights are also the fastest growing segment. You hear about the NFL signing a $27 billion contract. Well, with the TV rights and the amount of viewerships going down for the NFL, imagine what the streaming rights are going to be for a company like Twitch if they get certain expectations on going forward. Imagine what these streaming companies will compete against each other for these naming rights. We could be talking triple billion-dollar digits eventually here in the next 20, 30 years in terms of the media rights. In terms of demographics and sort of where the most popular is North America, obviously. But China is not very far behind, and especially with the handheld competing esports market exploding and people watching on their handheld devices, you will definitely see China explode in the very near future. This is the part, once again, where I said I'm kind of really involved with esports is in terms of franchising. A lot of people have had opportunities to get in on the ground level buying a franchise, and I took advantage of that. And what happens is literally like you see with NFL, NBA, or NHL teams, these franchises increase in value due to the fact that the media rights are so valuable and there's so many people coming in to watch and participate in this sports. League of Legends, 2017, $10 million for a franchise. By 2018, it had almost gone up 4 times that in price. So we're always expecting esports to continue to grow at a rapid rate. Employment. Now, this is where it gets kind of tricky with esports, where you look at some of the numbers we have up here. Glassdoor listed 1,300 jobs available for esports. But when you really think about it, the jobs that are specific to esports also funnel into a ton of other fields. We're talking about businesses all over the place. We're talking about computer science jobs, graphic design jobs. So this is not just specific to esports, and a lot of these new jobs for esports are probably labeled wrong. When you apply to be a graphic designer at Activision, you might be in esports, or you might be working on a completely separate game. So there's no real way to track the actual employment numbers for this so far, as it's still an emerging industry. The job titles are still not quite solidified, but just know that when you have a program like this and you were looking for these markets, it opens up a world into different areas for people to basically compete in. Not to mention legal. We're talking about a lot of ethics problems coming forward with esports because the leagues are owned by individuals, and they also own the rights to the teams, and they also own the rights to the players. So we're going to see a lot of legal people have to get involved in esports going on in the future. Higher education. Not only is esports as a program coming to your university, esports is going to transform your universities quite a bit. Varsity teams are being picked up all the time. Scholarship athletes are being signed to a lot of different campuses across this country. And if you think about it, this just makes a lot of sense due to the fact that your brand recognition a lot of times is tied to the impact you have on sports. Every year when we do our monthly webcast, we talk about what a bump up school gets in brand because they make the NCAA tournament. This same kind of impact can happen with esports going forward as you get more and more people tuning in. The facilities at your universities are always in flux, but now they're even getting shaped by esports, as we have, as you can see here, some schools are putting in arenas for esports. They're putting in high-speed bandwidth for esports, as well as, of course, the bandwidth use that is going on in your facility today. So this is really changing the face of college campuses in not an extreme way, but it's adding a new feature to it. Programs are popping up all over the place for esports. We really tie this back to like the explosion of sports management back in the 90s, where everybody and their mother watched Jerry Maguire and decided that they were going to become a sports agent. This is kind of happening with esports right now. And there is a lot of different ways to launch a program and a lot of different fits. Becker College was the first one to do it. They housed it in the School of Design and Technology, which really ties into graphic design field, building video games and what they look like, as well as the streaming services and putting them out there, which kind of ties into the distribution. But really, all of this can really come back into the fold of, again, you offer a lot of other courses that be relevant with this. Marketing is extremely important when it comes to esports. Business, legal, sponsorship, all of this is offered across a lot of different types of programs with esports. So they can be built in many different ways. Just to kind of sum it up, we've talked a lot about a lot of programs here, and I'm not going to go through the other examples we have at esports because there's quite a few out there and we're kind of running a little bit tight on time. But when you're considering starting a program, we always come back to three important things: student demand, jobs, and competition. And when we start like looking at a program such as esports, you can tell by the way things are exploding, student demand is exploding out there right now. And especially in a market that, for students that's kind of been struggling, as we've seen a decline in men attending college and stuff. This is a program that is right for that demographic. Jobs, as you can see, there aren't a lot of specific jobs, but again, when somebody graduates with an eSport degree, they do not have to go directly into esports. They can enter business, multi-fields in business. They can enter a million different types of fields in computer science. So the opportunities that these people possess by graduating with a degree type like this would really open up a lot of doors. And the last but not least is competition. This is ground level. This is right where we're starting out with. So there are opportunities here to create a brand new market for esports and kind of really let people in the door, kind of establish yourself as a brand new kind of early mover in the program market. I wouldn't say actually early mover when it comes to esports, is this is kind of the most mature program that we've talked about today, but there's definitely a ton of upside and a ton of opportunity to add a new program or even tweak maybe your business program, maybe your sports management program to offer these specific classes that also tie in the esport aspects. It's kind of funny when you think about it, esports is so popular today. Shaquille O'Neal has a great quote, and he is one of the biggest investors, where the fan base is so huge and passionate, they're famous, about their favorite games and players. I'd be crazy not to get involved. Hell, I would have studied if I'd gone this at LSU. So as you can tell, this is fast growing. It's an awesome program to be in, and I think it should definitely be on your radar.